Okay, so we have a screw thread. Now we're going to make the cap, make a new component, call it the cap, and then we're going to create a sketch on the bottom plane. Now we've got to take it a little wider than the screw cap because we need some the screw thread because we need some thickness. So I'm going to drive the dimension to 72 millimeters, 70, 72. Finish the sketch. Now we need to extrude. So that's as high as the screw thread. Now we need some thickness at the top. So drive that dimension as well. So now we have a solid cap. I'm going to change the physical material here. So we edit, we duplicate and then edit. Pick a random color just so it's different. Apply always and then cancel. And then drag it onto the material. So now we should be able to see a little bit of the screw thread, and if we turn the visibility off. So now we're going to set up a section analysis, and that's going to be able to split the view so we can see inside. Alright, so we're making customized threads here. The built-in metric ISO threads will give a little bit of tolerance in between the two threads, but we're going to create a little bit more just so the ceramic fits a little better. We're going to use the combine tool. We're going to target the cap and then select the tool body, and we're going to use the screw thread. Keep the tools and cut as the options here. Now when we take the visibility off the screw, we can see the negative, the exact negative of the screw cap. So now we have to create some tolerance because the clay can shift a little bit in the kiln or all kinds of things. So we're going to use the offset face tool on the modify. You really have to make sure that you're selecting the right face. At the moment here I'm making a mistake and I've selected the screw thread to offset, where we just want to offset the inside of the cap. So if we take the visibility of the screw off, we can just select the cap face, and now we're going to offset the top face here. 0.4 is just something I've figured out. I'm going to do it on this face here, and this one. Now if we put the visibility back, we can see that little tolerance there. That's what we want. Offset the last face. Click OK. Okay, so we've built up some tolerance of all the screw threads. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create a sketch on the inside of the top of the cap. So we'll take the visibility of the screw off. I find it easier to tilt the view. Then we're going to select that face and create a sketch. Right, we're going to use the circle tool, and we're going to go, again, it's easier to tilt the view and see where we're going to draw to. So we'll bring that down. We want to go right to this corner over here. Now we want to extrude this, both sides of the circle. Some is covered up by the thread there, but if you work on it, you'll be able to select that as well. And we're going to bring that down just a little bit. And this is going to be where the silicone's poured. And then I'm just going to bring it up a little bit on that side. And it's just going to leave a little bit more of a space for the silicone seal. So now we have our threads with the tolerance. I'm going to take the analysis off, and now we can see, but it's really quite sharp, so we're going to have to add some fillets. One to the start, 1 millimeter. Turn the model around to the bottom of the thread, get that one too. Good. So now I'm going to turn back the analysis, the cutaway view, so we can see on the inside, and we can see that all those edges are really quite sharp. We're going to need to put some fillets on them as well. So again, the middle 2 millimeters, I've just kind of figured it out. When you're drawing these things, if you keep to metric and you keep to whole numbers, it's gonna be a lot easier for you. Okay, so we got it all filleted. So the cap is all smooth and nice and ready to be molded, but this screw thread needs the filleting as well. Right, so I'm going to make sure that the screw thread is selected, and then take the visibility off the cap, take the analysis off, and now we'll be able to find all those fillets. So the very top, 1 mil, the very bottom, again, that one was a little difficult to find, but you need to do it. Again, this is for being able to clean it. And then the normal faces of the screw thread. Now, if you put the same units in as you did on the cap, they should flow together. So that's the shaft of the thread there. So now when we look with the section analysis, the thread and the cap have 0.8 or 0.4, sorry, millimeter tolerance, and that's what we're going to need. So we're going to create another sketch on the top of the cap here. This is going to put a little bit more thickness to the top of the cap. See how it's thinner there? So we're just going to extrude that a little bit. And this is by eye. What you want is a mean thickness, the same thickness generally all through the pot. Whenever you make pots, you want them to be all the same thickness. Now we're going to create a chamfer on the top edge of the lid, and that's going to bring the average thickness in line with the rest of the pot. So now I'm going to create another sketch on top of the lid, and this is going to provide a little bit better grip. I'm going to draw an ellipse down here and drive the dimensions just in case you need to change the size. But yeah, all will become clear. So that's good. Now we want to take the analysis off, and I'm going to make a circular pattern using that ellipse, and then choosing the center of the lid, and that's going to repeat the pattern around the circle. It's very important for the ellipses to be even, so we can split the mold in two. Okay. So then we come out and we're going to extrude and select all of these, and then bring them all the way through the cap. This is just personal. It's a little bit of utility, but it's aesthetic as well. So, but see, now that has brought the overall thickness of the walls of the cap in line with the rest of the pot. So for demonstration purposes, this is basically what we're going to have. In my first demo, I did put a little bit of a rise in the top of the screw thread to seat the silicone. I'm just going to go ahead and start with the mold making process, but it's up to you. I would suggest putting that in, but we'll see how it goes. So we need to make a mold of the screw thread itself. Okay, so what we need to do is make sure that the screw thread is selected, and we're going to create a new component under the screw thread, and we just call it screw mold 1. So now we create a drawing on, now we have to decide where our split is going to be. So looking at the threads, I want to split it this way. So I'm going to pick this plane here. Right, so now we need to think about how much plaster we're going to use. So I'm going to bring a rectangle tool, and I'm going to go up into this top left corner. Yeah, a little bit wider. You want a little bit more plaster so it doesn't get saturated when you start casting a bunch. Okay, so we need a little bit more than the bottom of the screw thread as well. And that will create the spare or the reservoir for the casting slip. Right, so we're going to extrude this rectangle out past the model so we have a little bit more plaster. Drive the dimension in case we need to change it. So now we're going to use the combine tool using the mold and the screw thread. Make sure that it's on the cut and keep the tools always. So what that's done is taken the negative of the screw thread away from the mold. Okay, so that's the start of the mold. There's no way to get slip in, and we need to create the other side as well. Now what we're going to do is create a sketch on the surface of the mold, and I'm going to pull the rectangle tool down and create a keyway. Now this will make sure that the two molds will come together every time we pull apart the mold to get another piece out. And there's a couple tricks here. We're going to extrude both sides. Don't have to go crazy far. It's just so the two halves meet each other exactly the same. So now we're going to use the draft tool, and this is really handy, especially with mold making and slip casting. So we're going to use these faces here. All of the faces of the keyways except the outside ones. This will come into play when we combine the two halves. Bring the angle in and click OK. Right, so now it's starting to look like an actual plaster mold. There's no way to get slip in. We need the other side, and we need to really finish it up, but we're getting there. So what we need to do is make sure that the screw part is selected, and we're going to make another component and call this screw mold 2, and this will be the other half. This is a lot easier to do once you do the homework with the keyways in the first piece. Whether you use circular keyways or these rectangular ones, it's up to you. But right, so we want to draw on that plane, which is the side of the mold, and completely mimic the mold shape. Then we're going to extrude it. Now this one's a little bit tricky. So we want to extrude all of it, which you might need to take some visibility of. That last section there, you need to take the first screw mold away, and then you'll be able to select that as well. Okay, then you can put it back on if you want. So we're going to pull it out as much as we did the first time, and taking a little bit of notes, keeping it metric, keeping even numbers. That's going to help. So now we're going to combine with the first mold, the cut operation, and keep the tools again. Okay, so that's cut away the negative of the keyway, so those two mold pieces will fit. Now we're going to combine with the screw thread on the second side, keeping the tools again, and now that's given the negative of the other side of the screw thread to the second mold. Okay, so now we have two-piece mold with the negatives cut in, the keyways cut in, but we don't have a way to get the slip in. And if we cast it, which is single cast, it's going to have the ripples of the screw threads on the inside of the bottle, which we don't want. So what we're going to do is make sure that we're on the screw part again, and we're going to draw a circle on the bottom of the mold. The reason why I have the screw part selected is so that it cuts into the screw mold 1 and the screw mold 2. It's a bit of a mess up here, but we'll put on the section analysis again, just so we can see where we're cutting. Don't want to cut into the wrong side. You can always go back with the CAD. But right, so we'll turn that on and we'll draw. So we want to go through the bottom. So we pick this plane, create a sketch, and then you can look. What we want to do is have a little bit of a draft angle on the spare or the reservoir for the slip cast, for the slip. So as the plaster sucks it out, more liquid slip can sink down into the mold. It's not critical with this, but it does help, and it helps with it coming out of the mold as well. So we want to extrude both halves, and we'll bring it down. Make sure that it's on the cut function. Bring it down, and then we're going to put a little bit of an angle on this extrusion. So if we tilt it over a little bit, we see this little arc here. We can bring that in. This will also provide a little bit of a cut line, so you can cut your screw thread in the same place every time. So again, if we slip cast this, which I would call a single cast, we would have a ripple of the screw threads on the inside of the bottle, and that's not really ideal. So what we want to do is we have to create another piece of plaster to go into the middle of the screw thread. So it creates what's called a double cast or a solid cast. So under the screw, I'm going to create another component, and I call them slugs. So we're going to call it a screw slug. Okay, and so now we want to be at least as high as the top of the mold. So I'm going to pick that dimension there, and we're going to draw a circle. And if you drive this dimension, you'll be able to change it as well. You don't need to drive it. You can go back into the sketch and drive the dimension afterwards, and then you can change the value. Now we want to extrude, make sure that it is new body, that's what the operation is. And we need the side view here, and pull it down all the way into the other end. This is going to make sense in a second. So now we need to put a little bit of a draft angle on that slug, so we'll be able to get it out, and so we have a nice smooth finish on the inside. So now this is just tidying things up a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit of a fillet on here. I know from going through this process before that end needs to be quite robust, because it gets knocked as you're knocking the middle slug out of the cast. So now we want to combine the first mold piece with the slug, and that's going to take a negative away. Keep the tools there, and we're going to do the same to the other side. What this does is it puts the slug in the center of the two halves and makes a little keyway for it to seat down every time. Right, so we're pretty much done here. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping and change the colors of these objects, just so we're able to differentiate each side, and as I'm a visual learner, it just makes a little bit more sense to me. These colors can be anything you want. It's very arbitrary. They'll all be white at the end, right? Because it'll be plaster. But it can come in handy when you're looking at two different pieces fitting together, and or oh, if I printed this one and not that one, and so putting some labels, color labels on everything really helps me out doing that. And that's it. That's the basic mold making workflow for the screw thread. The screw cap is a lot more complicated, but I'll try to get that together soon. Thanks for watching.